What's up everybody? Chris here from Power Company Climbing. I'm here in the machine shop today about to warm up for a session, and I thought it'd be a good time to follow up on an episode that I just recorded with Neely Quinn over at Training Beta. Neely and I talked about movement and technique, some of the big basics around it, as well as some of the errors that I see being commonly made. Now, one of the things we discussed was that working on technique and working on movement have some big global ideas, things like tension, rhythm, pace. And this can be a really nebulous conversation, so I thought it might be good for you to see it in practice and to just talk a little about it in video form. Now, we're always working on tension, rhythm, pace. These are conversations and decisions we're making all the time while we're climbing. But by warming up mindfully and building the awareness and putting real thought and effort into those things, you just stand to become a better climber, widen your skill set, and understand a little bit more about when and where and why you use certain things. So what I'm going to do first, and I do this in almost every warm-up, is to start with big handholds and pretty small feet, just to really start thinking about pressing through those feet really, really hard, getting all the weight onto my feet. I'll start on a relatively low angle. This is our 20-degree board, and I'll move that into our 45-degree board. And the idea is to get that sensation settled for me so that I can carry it on to harder and harder climbs throughout the session. Now, I know that this is hard to recognize as a drill or as me doing something specific, but what I'm really doing is just focusing on driving hard through my feet and making sure that that's where all my weight is going, trying to put as little weight on my hands as possible. Generally speaking, as I move to a steeper wall, the feet are going to have to get a little bit bigger at first so that I can really drive through them and focus on that. Now, once I've done this exercise and I've moved across the wall and I feel like I'm really putting some weight through my feet, then I might come back and just change up the pace a little bit. The first time through is going to be really slow. That's my natural speed, and I'm going to take it really slow just to focus on putting that weight on my feet. Next time through, I might climb a really similar sequence, try to move a little bit faster, and still put that same amount of weight through my feet. This just starts to allow me to pull the trigger a little bit on faster moves. If you're somebody who climbs fast naturally, then maybe slowing it down a little or speeding it up so it's just a little uncomfortable is going to be important for you. After about 10 or 15 minutes, or until I feel like I've gotten the weight on my feet how I want to and I'm feeling good about it, then I'll move into another drill called Sloth monkeys. Neely and I talked about these, and this is continuing the idea of pace, but also moving into rhythm and tension. So first what I'll do is pick a relatively easy problem still, and I'll climb it really, really slow and sloth-like. This is not slow motion, this is actual speed. I try to control every movement, really paying attention to the tension required to hold each position and grind through it really slowly. Now, you'll notice that I do my sloth in a very frontal, more powerful method. That's because I'm training and warming up for bouldering, and most of the hard boulders I'm going to try today are more frontal and more powerful, so that's how I'm warming up. Next, I do the same problem, more monkey-like. So with a little more momentum, it forces me to find a rhythm and allow the momentum to carry itself, or it looks really jerky. This particular problem is a new one to me in the gym, so it's forcing me to make decisions fast, and I don't have the sequence dialed in. So this is a really good opportunity for me to test these skills I've been building. Now, I'll eventually take that sloth and monkey style onto harder and harder boulders over maybe 3 or 4 different boulders. And I'll start looking for bigger moves that are harder to sloth and sequences that force me to make some interesting decisions to keep the momentum going. This particular problem has a couple of big, hard moves that are really hard for me to do in a sloth style. And you'll hear that I'm breathing really deliberately, trying to really force the tension. And that just really gets me ready to try hard on later, harder boulders without having to tax my fingers early on in the session. So I don't know if you noticed, but the third move of that problem as a sloth is really, really hard for me. I find it much easier to use a little momentum. However, I would like to be able to keep that tension, and I know that I can. So I'm going to try that move a couple more times just to really dial in the tension. Then I'll move on to the next drill. So I'm feeling pretty good about my tension at this point. I feel like I improved that move a little bit by playing with my breathing, playing with the path that I was using, and I'm just feeling like I can engage it better. So I'm going to move on to some hover project moves. Neely and I talked about these, and this is a great way to really own the finishing positions of moves rather than just doing a move and crashing down onto the hold and not really understanding the finishing positions and the tension required to hit really precise holds or hold tough positions. So this move that I'm about to do is one that I find really difficult to do as a hover. It puts me in a position I'm not good at holding. So I like to use it as sort of a project hover. So first I'm going to do it regular speed. Next, I will try the move as a hover. If I'm not happy with that, I'll try it again and really try to dial in and keep that tension. Neely and I also talked a little bit about dead stops, and that's essentially along the same line as the hovers, but more dynamic. So I'm going to do a big move with momentum and then try to stop everything right at that last second. That forces me to sort of toggle between 2 levels of tension. So I can't create a bunch of tension right at the beginning and go because I need to create that momentum. So I let off the tension a little bit, recreate it at the end of the move. Many of the hardest moves on the hardest boulders are very similar to this. So this move should be hard enough that you can't quite stop at the end and hover, but you will slow everything down and try to be really intentional about slowing everything down. I'll do this first at regular speed, then I'll try it as a dead stop. And again, if I feel like I can do it better, I'm going to try it again. So this is just one way that you can use working on new skills in your warm-ups. And I'll at this point move on to a more performance mode and really focused effort. I'll work on some harder problems, and these drills have really primed me to give really solid effort. I feel like my pace has quickened a little bit, as well as my rhythm has gotten a little faster and remained rhythmic. I am really dialed into the tension at this point, and I feel like I can give a really good effort on some problems. So next, what I'm going to do, I'm going to try to repeat a couple of problems. I'm going to give 3 tries on each. Just try really, really hard, do some hangboarding, and move on to limit bouldering. And eventually the goal will be to move these skills that I'm working on onto harder and harder boulders, such that it shows up in my limit bouldering and in sending harder projects. So I'm going to finish with this session. Thanks for listening to the podcast, and thanks for watching.